So, when you picture the history of a country, what comes to mind? Elections? Revolutions? Maybe some big wars? Well, for China, for literally thousands of years, its history moves to a completely different rhythm: the rise and fall of great ruling families. We're going to unravel this immense history by focusing on that one core concept, the dynasty.
So, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the engine that drives all of Chinese history, then jump from myth all the way to the first real empire. We'll check out its golden ages, see how invaders and innovators totally shook things up, and finally, watch the last imperial dynasties take their final bow. All right, let's dive in.
All right, first things first, we have to get our heads around this fundamental pattern because it defines everything we're about to talk about. This isn't just some, historical detail. It is the very engine of Chinese history. Now, what's so wild about this idea is that it's not about politics or parties. It's all about family. Power belongs to a single bloodline. I mean, think about it. The capital, the government, all the palaces, they could all stay the same. But the second a new family takes the throne, bam, a new dynasty begins. It's a completely different way of marking time in history.
And this right here, this is the pattern that defines centuries. You've got a powerful family that rises up and unites all the warring states. But, over time, that dynasty starts to falter. Corruption creeps in, it loses its grip, and the whole nation just collapses into war. And then, out of all that chaos, a new victor emerges to pull the land back together and start the whole cycle all over again. Unification, decay, collapse, and rebirth. It's this constant, repeating rhythm that is the heartbeat of Chinese history.
Okay, so let's see this cycle in action. We're going to start at the very, very beginning, at the dawn of Chinese civilization, and watch how it grows from these ancient myths and legends into the very first unified empire. So we're talking way back, like over 6,000 years ago. The very origins of Chinese civilization are just steeped in myth. You've got these legendary heroes called the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Now, these weren't rulers like we think of them today. They were mythical figures who supposedly taught humanity the basics. Fuxi brought hunting and fishing, Shennong invented agriculture, and Nua is said to have created humans. This whole era eventually leads into the Longshan culture and then the Bronze Age, which is where we get the first kind of legendary dynasties like the Xia. Okay, fast forward a bit. Near the end of the Zhou dynasty, China enters this incredibly vibrant time. They call it the 100 Schools of Thought. You have brilliant minds like Confucius and Laozi debating everything from morality to how to run a government. I mean, their ideas would shape China for millennia. But this golden age of philosophy, it wasn't going to last. As this quote hints, that pursuit of wisdom pretty soon gave way to raw ambition and a whole lot of conflict. And that shift was, it was absolute. The whole focus just flipped from deep philosophy to straight-up warfare. The development of iron weapons just fueled this new, much more brutal age, as all these competing states turned on each other, and this plunged the land into centuries of just relentless fighting, what we now call the Warring States period. But out of this brutal, centuries-long free-for-all, one state, forged in the fires of war and just defined by its ruthless efficiency, would rise up and crush all its rivals. It was going to end the chaos and, for the very first time, unite China under a single banner. And that brings us to a huge turning point: the birth of the first unified empire and its amazing successor, a dynasty that would create a cultural and political blueprint for China that would last for 2,000 years. The story of China's first emperor might be more familiar than you think, all thanks to Hollywood. It's funny how pop culture sometimes gives us a window into these epic histories, right? And this guy is a perfect example. Yeah, that villain, the ruthless conqueror played by Jet Li, he's based on a real person, Qin Shi Huang. He was the leader who finally put an end to the Warring States period. His Qin dynasty was, it was incredibly harsh, so it didn't last long. But its impact? Monumental. He standardized currency, writing, measurements, and he started building the Great Wall. He literally created the blueprint for a unified Chinese empire. So after the Qin dynasty just collapsed, China fell right back into war. Two major powers, the Chu and the Han,
battled it out for supremacy. This struggle was so epic, so famous, they actually immortalized it in Chinese chess. You know how the two sides of the board are separated by a river? That river represents the divide between the Chu and Han territories. How cool is that? Well, the Han Kingdom won that war, and they established the mighty Han Dynasty. And this was China's first real golden age. We're talking 400 years of prosperity, expansion, and incredible cultural achievement. But, you guessed it, true to the cycle, it eventually weakened, it collapsed, and it led to one of the most famous periods of division in all of Chinese history, the era of the Three Kingdoms. So, after that first great cycle, the whole character of China starts to shift. We've got new ideas and faiths arriving from faraway lands, world-changing technologies are being invented, and, for the very first time, the empire gets ruled by invaders from beyond the Great Wall.
All right, pop quiz. Are you a fan of the anime Dragon Ball? Because, believe it or not, the story of one of the world's most famous anime heroes has its roots deep in China's second golden age, a time of incredible cultural mixing. Okay, so after a short reunification under the Sui dynasty, China enters its second golden age with the Tang dynasty. The Silk Road is booming, bringing in not just goods, but new ideas. Buddhism, which had come from India, just flourished. And this is the setting for the classic novel Journey to the West, where a monk travels to India to get sacred scriptures. His powerful bodyguard, the Monkey King Sun Wukong, yep, that's the direct inspiration for Goku. After the Tang, we get the Song dynasty, which kicked off this just astonishing period of innovation. I mean, to put this in perspective, while Europe was still in the Middle Ages, the Song were inventing things that would literally change the world. Gunpowder, movable type printing, the magnetic compass. It was a full-blown scientific and intellectual revolution. But this incredible era of innovation was brought to a really violent end. The Mongols, led by Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, swept down from the north and conquered all of China. They established the Yuan dynasty. And this marks the very first time in history that all of China was ruled by a non-Han ethnic group, an event you might have seen brought to life in that Marco Polo series. And here we go, the dynastic cycle turns once more. Foreign rulers get overthrown and Han Chinese rule is restored. But even that restoration, it was only temporary. It was followed by one final invasion that established China's last and its largest imperial dynasty. So, after kicking out the Mongols, the native Han-led Ming dynasty was established. This was a time of stability, of restoration. But it's fascinating. While the West was diving into the Renaissance and the Age of Exploration, looking outward, the Ming dynasty was looking inward, focusing heavily on this social philosophy called Neo-Confucianism. The Ming, just like the others, eventually weakened and fell to another invasion from the north, this time by the Manchus. They established the Qing dynasty, which would be the very last imperial dynasty in China's history. They expanded the empire to its biggest size ever, but they also faced more and more conflict with the Western powers who were showing up on their doorstep. This super tumultuous late Qing period, that's the setting for a lot of martial arts films, like Ip Man, which are all about Chinese resistance to foreign invasion. Okay, wow. We have just burned through thousands of years of history, from the first emperor all the way to the last. So, how on earth are we supposed to remember all of this? Don't worry, I've got a simple tool to help you lock in the major dynasties. Han, Sui, Tang, Song, Yun, Ming, and Qing. Yeah, it's a lot, I know. But just remember this one sentence. Happy sloths travel slowly, yearning meditative quietness. Happy sloths travel slowly, yearning meditative quietness. With that one phrase, you now hold the sequence of China's major dynasties, that grand, repeating cycle of unification and collapse that we followed for millennia. So now that you see this pattern so clearly in the past, what echoes of it do you see in the world today?